Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
A modern witch's spoken word grimoire.
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense
Your cauldron and your crystals
and join us
as we get
back on the broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick. I'm Layla, and on this episode, we're heading towards the first full moon of a brand new year. We'll be talking about things that you can do as a new witch or a solitary witch to celebrate the power of the full moon.
And I'm Chelle, and hey, folks, first of all, I think on the wolf moon, we should all just start howling.
Oh. They used to think that the wolves howling in January was because they were starving. You know, we're in the middle of winter, and up here in the northeast of the United States, where the wolves roam in the mountains, right? It's pretty cold and they're hungry. But they found out that it's just because they're looking for their pack, declaring territory. They're just talking to each other.
I feel like they can find food in the winter. They're just having conversations.
Exactly. That's what it is.
I'll be honest with you, I don't keep track of the moon names. I just keep track of the full moon and then the new moon, and half the time I don't even remember what moon it is. So wolf moon, yay.
I don't either. I think it's kind of neat. It's interesting that different people had names for the moon, but that never really figures into my practice, to be honest.
I never knew the significance.
Kind of an interesting little factoid. I am interested in the astrology of it, though. This full moon is going to be in Cancer.
Interesting.
Yeah, like the full moon itself, I always see as very feminine, very emotional.
The mother goddess.
And Cancer, that's the moon sign, right? And they're also very emotional, very watery, very goddess-like, I think. So kind of fitting. I think it's going to amplify those energies.
So tonight we want to kind of focus on a full moon ritual for solitaires. A lot of you folks are unable to connect with other witches, whether it be because of your location or whatever. So we want to talk a little bit about how do you celebrate the full moon if it's just you, yourself, and you?
And how do you celebrate the full moon if you don't know why you're supposed to celebrate the full moon? What if you're a brand new witch?
We can also talk about why you celebrate the full moon.
One of the reasons I always celebrated the full moon is the pull of it. I mean, it's when you go outside on the full moon, you can't help but feel magical. You can't help but feel that energy in the air. Shit, I think I celebrated the full moon before I was even a witch. I mean, who doesn't love to look up at the full moon in the sky, right? How beautiful and powerful is that?
You know, funny story. My kids find certain things that I do annoying. I mean, I am their parent. That's, natural. But ever since they were little, we'd be out driving. I mean, I was like a taxi cab for my kids. And I'd be like, kids, look at the moon. It got to the point where I think my daughter actually hit me once because she was just sick of hearing it. My son totally, oh, mom, yeah, isn't it pretty? But recently, I went and visited both of my adult children and jokingly said, hey, kids, look at the moon. And they both were like, every time I see the moon, mom, I think of you. That's what I was
Aw.
going for. That is what I
Aw.
was going for.
There's worse things to be associated with than the glorious moon.
Yeah, and there's worse things my kids could associate me with.
And even though we know it's a big rock in the sky that kind of twirls around the earth, it's still very magical. We know that it gets smaller and bigger, and we know why. But to agricultural people hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, it was much more mystical.
Right, right.
I mean, in a society that's based on agriculture, the moon is vitally important. That's how they figured things out. That's how they knew when to plant, to know when to harvest, to know when holy days were, when holidays were, to essentially follow the wheel of the year. And a lot of our practices are based on those same agrarian beliefs. And because it was so important, of course they turned it into a deity and wanted to honor it. And although we know it's a rock and not a goddess, we can still feel the same reverence and awe when we look up at the moon.
Now, when I look up at the full moon, that is kind of where I have my conversations with the goddess because I feel like that is almost my physical representation. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, you look at it and be like, what do I need to know now or going forward from now? So I kind of look at it as my time to converse with deity.
A lot of cultures see the moon as goddess and the sun as god. There are some that reverse it, like the Norse people. They have, I believe it's Sanna, the goddess Sanna is the sun goddess, and the moon is her brother, a god named Mani. So it really depends on what culture, but a lot of them see the moon as goddess. And it's easy to see why. Her cycle matches up with a woman's menstrual cycle, 29, 28, 29 days. It's easy to see the correlation.
Yeah, and I think part of both yours and mine, our Wiccan DNA, kind of led us down the moon, the goddess, the sun, the god.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
The Wiccans, we'll touch on that just a little bit because in Wiccan tradition, or a lot of them, maybe not all of them, but they celebrate Esbats, which are monthly full moon rituals, typically on the full moon when the moon is considered to be at the height of its power. And this is the one of the things that I always find funny because everybody's like, the full moon, it's beautiful, it's huge, it's at the peak of power. But that's not when you're supposed to cast manifestation spells or attraction spells. That's when you're actually banishing things. So it kind of represents a little bit of both. But yeah, Wiccans would celebrate once a month on the full moon typically.
You know, I know you remember this, obviously, but when we were back in a coven together,
Circle on Marat.
we actually focused on the dark moon for our rituals.
That's right. And we did that because that was the time of beginnings. That was when, if
Right.
you're going to cast something that needs to come to fruition or to grow, the new moon's actually going to be the best time to do that. Also, that dark face of the goddess, that dark time of the moon is a going within time. It's a gathering of your power, it's a gathering of knowledge. And our coven, Circle Amarat, long rested soul.
Love Amra.
Yeah. We were focused on learning and finding things out and going within. So it was kind of fitting. But yeah, the full moon can be a wonderful source of power because of all that energy, that bright, glorious energy, but also feels like a time when you can get very close to the goddess, when you can get very close to deity. It just feels powerful standing in the moonlight.
And it kind of creates that, I feel like an ebb and flow where, when you're at the full moon, you're kind of at that perfect flow, whereas the dark, I kind of look as like the ebb, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that fits in with the cycles of everything because witchcraft, paganism is very much a lot about cycles. We talked about how the moon cycle is very similar to a menstrual cycle and the changing, the going within, the dark, the going to fullness of the full moon. That's a month-long cycle that kind of mirrors the bigger cycle of the wheel of the year. Also mirrors on a smaller scale the daily cycle that we go through. So if you follow those cycles, you can really use that energy in your magic or in your rituals to empower your spell work.
Now, there are negative connotations out there about the full moon. I personally have never seen a wolf man, but I've also heard from hospital staff that the full moon isn't really when most weird things happen or go down. People would say, oh, police and hospitals are really crammed on the full
I've
moon.
heard that. Yeah, I
People
hear
get
that from
weird.
people.
I have talked to people in both businesses, and it's actually like the week after.
That's weird. I have heard from people that say that the full moon, they do get a lot of that. They're like, oh, the full moon's coming, gotta watch out. We schedule extra people.
But I do feel that that energy can affect the masses, whether you are magical or not.
I think so. I like to think so. I mean, people do talk about how the full moon affects the tides. It has some type of pull on people. And we're 70% water, so why doesn't it have an effect on us too, right?
Right,
There's
right.
that. Even the word lunatic is related to the word for moon, luna, because people thought you would get touched by the moon. If you were out in that moonlight, they thought it could make you crazy. So there are people going back for a very long time that thought that the moon could affect you on an emotional or a physical level.
Not seeing the moon makes me crazy and affects me on that level. Just saying.
Right? But magically, a lot of magic is sympathetic magic, is like attracts like. And so seeing the moon in its fullness and its completion, it's actually just starting to decay. It's actually just starting to go back towards being a new moon, right? So that's when you can do banishings. That's why, even though the power of the moon looks very full and looks very bright, because it's heading towards dark moon, that's when you would do your banishings then.
Now, I get a lot of questions about, well, what if I can't do it on that day or whatever? You know, the full moon is tonight and you're busy. I am one of those people of the thought that it is a 3 day thing. You know, your calendar might say today is the full moon, but it is a yesterday, today, and tomorrow thing. Honestly, I don't remember where I got on that bandwagon, but at some point in my magical journey, it was come across to me as a 3 day thing. It is technically full for 3 days. What's your
Right.
thought on that?
I love that. I'm very much a big fan of that. When I'm getting serious about magic, like sometimes I'll just whip off a spell. Sometimes I'll just throw some herbs together in a joint and call it honoring the forest deities, you know? But other times I get kind of serious about it. And so I want to do my manifestation money spell when the moon is rising towards full. Or I'll want to do my releasing negativity spell after the full moon.
Right.
To me, that feels very important. I want to work with the energies that are already there. I don't want to make it any harder for myself than I have to.
Yep.
The moon does pull the freaking tides. So, in my mind, that means it can affect the energy of my spell just as easily. So, for me, I do want to pay attention to where it is in those 3 days. Like, is it the day before, the day of, or the day after? Because that can make a little bit of a difference. But honestly, if you're just celebrating the full moon, the goddess of the full moon, that power, any of the three will work. But if I'm trying to do a serious spell and it needs to be raising energy, I'll do it before the full moon. And if it needs to be releasing energy, I do it after the full moon to coincide better with those energies.
Now, what are your thoughts? And you might have just kind of explained it, but what are your thoughts on, okay, what if I want to do a releasing negativity because it is bearing down on me like nobody's business, but I'm 4 days before the full moon? Do you think what are your thoughts on should I do it? Should I wait? Would it be effective, just as effective? Do you have to do your spells and rituals based on moon phases? I guess is the
No,
point.
you absolutely do not have to. You absolutely do not have to. Do I think it's going to give a little extra oomph, a little extra power to your spell? Yes, I really do. I do think that if you use herbs and stones and the time of month, even the time of day, if you work with those energies that are in alignment with your purpose, I very much feel that that adds to your spell work and to your rituals. Do you have to do that? Hell no. You can just do that whenever you want to. Like you're saying, if you need to do that releasing spell like right now, you're like, I
Do
need to
it.
do this right now. Fucking do
Do it.
it. Do it. And your energy is going to be enough. You're going to do a great job on that spell. If you would feel better and if you would be like, all right, I can wait 4 days, I can gather my things together and journal a little bit and meditate on it for 4 days and I can wait, then wait until it's more in alignment. You might feel that energy work a little more smoothly for you, but it's not necessary.
And I do 100% agree, but I pose the question because I know that the tick and the talk makes it sound like if you don't do it on this day at this time, blah,
Ugh.
blah, blah, nothing will ever work ever.
Right.
And I don't believe that either.
Uh-uh. No, I don't either. You can use the wrong stones and you can use the wrong herbs.
Are they really wrong?
That's the question. If they feel right to you, then I feel like they have energetically volunteered themselves to be for your purpose.
Right. And sometimes it's all about, hey, this is what I have. I can't get what a book or a website says. I am going to use a green candle and malachite to do a well-being ritual.
Sure.
You know, those two might be more money related or financial related, but you got to use what you got to use.
I am very much a fan of using the right tool. I love it. It feels so good when I can have incense for air, when I have a candle for fire, when I have water and earth. And maybe because of my Wiccan DNA, I feel that those are important. I feel like I want to honor the elements that are around me. So it feels good when I have the right things, when I have the right herbs and wake them up, when I'm doing it at the right time. Those are wonderful things, and you should definitely try it. It works better for some people than others. Some people find that they never ever need to do that or even like to do that. And other people find comfort in that ritual and they feel those energetic connections when they use the quote unquote right tools. So it's going to take trial and error.
If they don't have access to the tools or are in
Right.
the broom closet, they're not necessary.
Sure.
They're wonderful to have, but it doesn't take away if you don't have them.
Exactly. I 100% agree. And there's nothing that says your athame has to be a $1,000 perfectly constructed brass athame with, a steel point and an obsidian in the handle.
I have literally, in a ritual, used a butter knife as an athame, just saying,
Hmm.
like a butter knife.
I've used a flower as an athame. That's not even bladed. So whatever you want to do, there's not even a blade on a flower. There's thorns though. Whatever is working is what I'm saying. If your candle is a picture of a candle, that's fine.
Good enough.
You don't even need a candle. Just
Hey, you
use
can get
whatever.
one of those YouTube videos where it just puts a like a candle or a fireplace in the background.
Right. But there is magic in cycles, there's magic in ritual, and there's magic in doing things regularly. And so doing something on the full moon all the time can help you in your practice. Maybe you can't do daily magic, but you can do a full moon spell, or you can do a dark moon banishing spell, or, you can do a full moon ritual or a dark moon spell. And then, those are your touch points every full moon.
It can get you in the groove and set a pattern.
Exactly. And the full moon itself, just on its own, feels very magical. So it can be very easy to get into that space if that's the date that you choose. Maybe you can choose a special moon journal to just be where you write down your meditations or your tarot card pulls or your divination that you do just on full
Why does it
moons.
always have to go back to a journal with you?
Because it's so fun to look back at it and see where, if you look back at a year's worth of full moon tarot card pulls, how cool would that be? You can't look back at it unless you do it every month. So,
Well, I do it with tarot, but you want
there.
everybody to journal everything, man.
I do. How many journals do you have sitting on your desk that you are currently using?
Okay, three. Don't talk about it.
Exactly. So having one for just full moon tarot would be so beautiful and so fun. And I really like that because the full moon for me is so magical and powerful. And there have been times in my life when seeing the moon in the sky or on the lake. I grew up on Seneca Lake and seeing the moonlight, the full moon on that water, there's something special about that. I think people, taking a little time to make full moon special, even as a solitary, is not very hard. And I think it can really elevate your practice.
Side note here, because you know how I like to take left turns. It is also a way, if you are looking for quote unquote your deity or to connect with a deity, find out who you should or would be working with. I have also found the full moon to be a good way to kind of get that message. You know what I mean? Like speak to the moon and the moon will speak back kind of thing, who should my patron goddess be kind of thing. And I feel like the full moon is a time when you'd get an answer.
What would that look like? Like, what would someone do that?
I'm a weirdo. I just go outside and look at the moon and ask. And, I kind of get these, I don't want to say like a conversation in my head, but kind of like a conversation in my head where it's almost like I hear these responses like in my
Hmm.
inner brain. You know what I mean?
I love that. And if that's not something that our listeners can, if that's not something that you can do, meditating in moonlight is a great way to connect. And it's a wonderful time to try scrying. Put a bowl of water that reflects the moon. If it's too freaking cold outside, you can always do it in a window. You can do candlelight reflected in the water. But if you can meditate and unfocus or focus just on the moonlight or on candlelight on water, that can really help you get into a state, that alpha consciousness state where you can ask those questions and then maybe journal it or record what you say. If that conversation doesn't come as easily for you as it does for Chelle, doing some water scrying with, especially with the moon reflected in it, can really help you to get there.
Another thing I'm a fan of on full moons is divination. With me, everything goes back to tarot. It is a good time to kind of touch base with where's my path that I am on right now, potentially leading me.
Yeah, pull some cards and do it a little more formally on the full moon. Set that ritual, set that intention. Pick a time. Maybe you always do it when the moon is perfectly full, or maybe you always do it at 11 o'clock at night. But pick a time and do that divination every full moon and write it down. Full moons are a great time to let go of things. Maybe you're trying to banish something in your life. Now's the time when you're going to write things on your bay leaf or on a small piece of paper and burn it in a candle.
Letting go of what no longer serves you,
Yeah, let it go because as the moon diminishes, so will whatever it is that you release. That's also going to get smaller and smaller.
and a good time to create change.
Exactly, exactly. I know a lot of people like to make moon water. They like to put the water out and to absorb that full moon. What's your thoughts on if you can't see the moon? Does that still make moon water?
Okay, first of all, I think it does. And second of all, do you know how many jars of moon water I have at my house? I don't want to say I don't know what to do with because I technically do, but like, I feel like I make it and don't use it and make it and don't use it. Like, I have thunderstorm water, full moon water, snow water. I have it, not sure what to do with it.
I think we tend to, I know I'm guilty of this too, is I tend to over collect. Like, I
Oh
don't
my
need all
God,
this moon water.
for
I just need
real.
a little bit. But a couple of the things that I found to do with moon waters, first of all, bong water is fabulous. Pour your moon water in
Ooh,
there. Yeah, especially if you're doing smokable spells. It's a very nice thing. Simmer pots. I've actually started doing a couple simmer pots. Maybe
bravo.
I am
Yay.
so sick of winter right now. I am ready for the freshness of spring. So I start with moon water. I just saw I don't even know who said it, but I heard somebody say that they were going to wash their hair with moon water. And I thought that was a fabulous idea,
Ooh, good idea.
right? Because what great way to like cleanse yourself or to, absorb those energies into yourself than by washing your hair with that moon water.
I have also in my tea world heard that people will use it to then make magical tea.
That's perfect. That's perfect. As I'm sipping some tea right now, oh my gosh, Chelle. I'm going to pull a shell and I'm going to do a tangent right now because I'm
Whoa.
sad. I'm so sad.
Why?
Well, I'm currently sipping on my absolute favorite tea, which is from the Witch's Moon. It's their Crimson Lake.
Oh my God, that stuff is delectable.
It's so good.
Delectable.
I just drink this all the time and I'm so low on it. It's almost gone and I'm gonna cry. But I love the Witch's Moon, so I've been stalking their website. It's really, really good. But yes, since we are tea lovers here, we should definitely be using our moon water to make tea spells.
Well, now I have some that have been in bottles for so long. I don't know if I would want to drink it for safety reasons, but
That you can use to water your two cute little plants that I'm sure are still alive.
actually, I have a new sprout on the spider plant.
You
Just saying.
do?
Yeah.
Yay! They're alive and thriving. I love it.
Well, funny story, tangent. So my cat, they won't leave him alone,
Mm,
especially the spider. Clawed at one of the leaves and it got limp.
mm.
And I saw some weird thing on Facebook, Facebook, and it said if a spider plant ain't doing well, put ice in it. And I thought, what do I have to lose at this point?
You put ice in the spider plant?
I put 4 ice cubes on top of the dirt. No shit. The one that was limp is now up straight, still has my cat claw through it. And new sprout. Just saying.
Weird. Okay, I've never heard of this. Somebody needs to let me know if this is legit.
I was scrolling and it was some weird thing that came up in my feed, and I was like, how bad can ice be? It's just cold water.
And it worked. What the
You
heck?
know, it perked up after that, so all I can say is it had to work and not be coincidence.
All right, so back on track. Full moons, energy, using moon water for all sorts of wonderful things.
If you are a solitaire, how do you do a full moon ritual? Let's talk
Mm.
about that for a minute.
Okay. Well, I guess that depends on how formal you want to get. And I think that you should try to go all out. I think if you're going to try to have a regular practice, full moons are a super easy time. Like you said, you have the 3 days. You have magically, you have the day of, the day before, and the day after. And honestly, if it's the weekend after, I don't care. Do it when you can, as close as possible to the full moon.
Another point is, sometimes the moon is like technically full at, oh, I don't know, 2 in the afternoon. You can do your full moon ritual in the morning, afternoon, evening,
Yeah.
nighttime. It does not have to be at night. I don't
No.
know why people think it has to be at night, but it doesn't.
Nope. No, exactly. So pick a time, but try to do something big around the full moon. Make that your special, I'm going to be a witch today time, and pick a time where you can have an hour or whatever time you need and go big. Make your tea, make your smokable spell, get into the mood, wear your full moon outfit, whatever that happens, whatever makes you feel extra fucking witchy. Put on your jewelry, get out your ritual items, put on witchy music and get the incense going, get into the space, go outside, look at the moon, feel the moon. And then I say, do an actual ritual or an actual spell or a big meditation.
I agree 110% with all of that. But if you don't have the means to do that, or you are in the broom closet and afraid to do that, there are ways you can do it. And I am totally for all out, formal, consistent rituals. But maybe it is just a matter of you read the charge of the goddess, or,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, maybe you just look at the moon and have that conversation with deity and connect.
But make it special and make it regular, even if you can't make it big and flamboyant.
I think consistency is what
Yeah.
would help. No matter what your situation is, if you are consistent, that is going to lay the foundation for your magical practice, I think.
Now, when I was a witchling and I didn't know anybody before I met you, I did go out every full moon. I would find some way to go out. And I think I've talked before, maybe in the Stoned Witches Hour when I was a teenager. My across the hall from my bedroom was a window that opened onto the roof of a porch that was kind of hidden from everywhere, like from the road, from the next door neighbor house, but I could see the sky. And so I would go out on this roof and I would sprinkle salt in a circle and I would cast circle and do full moon ritual. I'd do a meditation. I'd talk to the moon. I'd read the charge of the goddess and really feel that energy. So for me, it was a full thing. I'd cast circle. I'd call quarters. I'd call to deity. Then I'd read the charge of the goddess and I would literally feel that energy flow through me in a big, wonderful conduit. It was perfect. It was so perfect. And that lasted until I realized that you could see the salt on the roof. Because I would leave it there, the sun had baked the salt into the tar of the roof, and there was a
Yeah.
white circle on the roof of my porch. So yeah, I had to pick a different spot after that. But just doing that is wonderful and special.
And I think the reasoning behind my suggestions also go back to childhood. I wasn't quite witchy yet, but I had, same thing, second story bedroom window, could look out to the moon. And that is kind of where I don't want to say like dump my problems, but like, as a teenager, who you bleeding your heart to? You ain't talking to your parents, you ain't telling your friends because they'll judge you and tell everybody in your homeroom class. I would talk to the moon, lay in bed and kind of talk to the moon. And I feel like I still do that.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. If your ritual is you sitting in the privacy of your bedroom where you can maybe just see a corner of the moon out the window if you angle your neck just the right way and talking to the moon or putting a crystal on your window ledge or writing in your journal when no one's looking, that's okay too.
And just impactful.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
again, consistency, try to put that in your monthly routine.
Now, one of the things that we've mentioned, and again, this is a little bit Wiccan, but it's something that I very much enjoy, is called drawing down the moon, which is a wonderful ceremony that was started. Doreen Valiente wrote The Charge of the Goddess. And the original Wiccans started the drawing down the moon, which is basically an act of possession. The high priest and the high priestess literally call to the energy of the goddess through the moon and bring her into the body of the high priestess, where she literally embodies the goddess, embodies the power of the goddess, pulls that energy into her, and then would sometimes give offerings, would speak in tongues, would speak to the coven or the circle, and would do workings that way.
I was actually at a ritual not too long ago, and during that part of it, I was tasked with scribing what the high priestess was saying while she had the goddess invoked within her. So it was my job to kind of journal what was basically coming from the goddess, the message from the goddess.
One of the most powerful rituals that I was ever part of was one of Circle Amarat's rituals.
I was going to say I better have been there.
You were. We did this in, it was in the backyard of Jonathan's house. We had Jonathan on in one of our earlier episodes, and I drew down the moon. This was a full moon ritual. I don't think it was a Wheel of the Year Sabbath. I believe it was a monthly espit that we happened for whatever reason to be doing on the full moon. We recited the charge of the goddess, and so I drew down the goddess, and it was the most wonderful, glowing, amazing feeling. And I remember, I believe Jonathan was the high priest of that ritual, walking with me around the circle and face to face with each of our coven members, and just feeling that energy flowing between me and them as I had a message for each person. It was just, and I've read for people, I've been a professional tarot reader, I've done divinations for people, and you can feel that energy channel through you sometimes when you really hit that sweet spot in a reading, you
Right,
know?
right. Yeah.
And this was that like times 1,000. And it was just absolutely beautiful, powerful energy. And I will never forget it. That was probably the last time I have actually drawn down the goddess in a public ritual, but it was very moving and it was very powerful.
I think that different people have different ways of drawing
Yeah.
down the moon, and doing things on my own sometimes I actually utilize, well, the Circle Amarat version of the Charge of the Goddess to draw down the moon.
Yes.
But there are many different versions of that and not very accessible. So if you don't have access, what is another suggestion you have other than the Charge of the Goddess?
Any poem, anything that means something to you. You could chant the goddess chant, Isis, Astarte, Diana, Hecate, Demeter, Kali, Inanna. You could do that chant. You could pick a rune that you like. You could pick a word that you like. You could pick one goddess name. You could say Hecate, Hecate, Hecate.
I have been using this one a lot lately. I look at the moon anytime I am outside smoking and can find it. And what always comes to mind, this damn 30-year-old chant, we all come from the goddess,
And
and
to
to her
her
we
we
shall
shall return,
return
like
like
a
a drop
drop
of
of
rain
rain flowing
flowing
to
through
the
the ocean.
ocean.
Yep. And I don't know if it's because I now live near the ocean, but for some reason, that chant, I can't get it out of my brain.
I love that you said that. That proves my point.
What?
Because that's a chant that we did so much in community, in our
Right,
rituals, at
right,
festivals. Everybody did that chant. And because of its repetition, because of its remembrance in so many different rituals and circles and spells, just saying that chant for you puts you in a very magical space. I can hear both of us chanting it in our heads, and I can feel that energy right now. That's what repetition does for you. That's what
right.
doing things over and over again will do for you. You can immediately get into that magical state, and it doesn't have to be the charge of the goddess. Whenever you need anything, once a month, and best when the moon is full, and 8 times more in the year, you shall meet in some safe place to celebrate my spirit, who am queen of all women. Sing feast. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but there's a lot of them out there. You don't need to do the whole thing, the charge of the goddess. You could pick a poem or you could pick a chant.
Find what works for you.
Exactly. Maybe it's a Doors song.
Yeah, right. I don't like using, me personally, I don't like using that goddess chant to draw down the moon because I don't feel like I connect with that listing of goddesses. I mean, Hecate, whole
Right.
different story, but Isis, Astarte, Diana, Demeter, and Kali might not be my flow at that point. So
Right.
I really do like that we all come from the goddess.
Yep.
And because I look at the moon as the goddess, I feel like that is my
That's
connection. You know what I
perfect.
mean?
That's perfect. Yeah. And if there's a particular deity that you work with, just chant that name.
Make up a chant.
Make up a chant, make up whatever you like. But I have a tea blend that you can also smoke. So you can mix this together, make a tea, make a smokable spell, take that with you outside. And as you're drinking and smoking these herbs, release that energy to the universe and maybe just chant the name of the herbs or maybe chant the name of the deity as you're looking at the moon and as you're feeling that moonlight wash over you. But it's just mugwort for intuition, dreams, psychic abilities, magical connection. It's to me it's a very moon-like herb. It's just so dreamy, you know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Chamomile, same thing. Peace, calm. It just says moon to me.
Dreamy.
And then peppermint, because of the time of year, because it's January new moon. Peppermint says winter to me. But it's also renewal and awakening and mental clarity. So you put the three of those together, either with a tea that you like or by themselves. You also can mix them with cannabis into a smokable spell. And that's going to bring those energies to you as you look at the moon, either outside bathing in its light or peeping at it through the corner that you can find in your room.
And that kind of sparks my next thought. I always try to leave at least some sort of offering, even if it's just a pinch. One option could be if you're doing a tea or a smokable, leave a pinch of it out. It doesn't have to be a 10-ounce bag, people.
Right,
A
right. Just a
pinch
little
will do.
pinch. Hmm.
And for me personally, and I know that you can relate, more often than not, my offering is generally weed, partially because it's sacred to me. So if it means a lot to me and I'm using it as an offering, that must mean that they're pretty spiffy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to kind of want to offer something that has some sort of quote unquote value. So I always just a pinch. I
I
mean,
love
I'm not
that.
wasting here, people. Don't
No.
don't get frightened, but just a pinch.
And I like to share my offerings. So a lot of times what my offering will be is the last few sips of my tea, or if I've rolled a joint and it's just paper with no type of like filter or anything on the end,
Okay.
like I'll just take the last bit of my joint and offer those herbs to the earth rather than something separate. So something that I have consumed as well. So my energy's in it too. I like to do that. Same thing. But you could also take your tools, like maybe sit in your room, lock your door if you have to, but sit
Right?
in your room, put all your altar tools around you in a big circle. Put your crystals and your athame and your candles and everything around you in a circle and do your meditation, do your goddess calls, do your energy work for the full moon in that circle of tools to charge them with that full moon energy.
I was just gonna say, good time to charge your tools. I have used the full moon before to clear a tarot deck. I had done a reading for someone on a quote unquote public level. Basically, I was paid to do it. It wasn't for a friend. And I felt like this person made my cards icky, icky, icky. I did not touch them until the full moon, and I kind of did
A banishing of that
clean
energy.
these for me kind of thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, they were fine after that. So I've used
Yeah.
it for that as well.
I've been very into knot magic lately. I love knotting cords. I love crochet. I
So
very much,
tacky.
right? I cannot wait until I level up my metalworking until I can do metal knots like Sam did that we had on just a little while back. But anyway, I've just recently started working with moon knots.
What is a moon knot?
This is taking any type of cord and bring that with you out to the full moon. Basically, you're going to tie a knot in it, braid it, knot it fancy if you want to. But the idea is you take your cords and you also wrap the moonlight into that knot. You wrap the full moon energy into that knot and
Well,
tie
I
it.
like that idea.
So now you have a battery, you have a stored knot of full moon energy. So maybe it's not moon water, but maybe you just need that energy in the knot. So, like earlier when you were saying maybe it's not the time to do the spell, maybe you have a couple knots where you knotted in full moon energy. And you can just unknot that as you're doing your spell to release that full moon energy with the spell that you're doing.
I also in the past have used the full moon to charge herbs, kind of a similar
Hmm.
sentiment to what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Use the full moon to charge herbs and then use those to do my loose incense and tea. So they kind of have that magical energy in
As they're
them
holding it. Yeah.
to kind of create a magical tea or a magical incense. You know what I mean?
You could put your jar of herbs outside in the moonlight, close the jar, and then tie a knot in it with a cord to hold the moon magic in.
Ooh.
It's
Ooh.
probably overkill, but it sounds fun. Another great thing to do, especially if you're going to do this every month, is to cleanse your home, cleanse your
Right.
space, your room, your office. Walk counterclockwise, walk widdershins around your house to banish any negative energy. And then walk deosil, walk clockwise to pull in the good energy.
Dust your altar.
Dust your altar. I know you're out there. Your altar is dusty as heck. This is your wake up call right now. Chelle and Layla say, dust your altar.
Hey, I did mine for the new year.
Yeah, I just did mine the other day too.
I'm good till the February moon, people.
That's right. And speaking of the end of this month, January is the first month of the calendar year. And that's kind of fun because it's a man made thing, but everybody celebrates it. So that gives it a lot of oomph, right? A lot of power.
Celebrate. January is nothing but a month of Mondays.
Yeah, pretty much. But the first full moon in the year is pretty special. And actually, there are, what is it? The Chinese New Year is
Yep.
calculated by the second new moon after the winter solstice.
If I am, I might be not technically right by a day or two, but I feel like this year the Chinese New Year is either like the 30th or the 31st.
29th. It's the
Yeah, I knew I was
29th. Yep.
close.
The new moon is the 29th. So I think that's the same day, or maybe it's the next day as the Chinese New Year.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm torn because with my pagan roots, I look at that first full moon of the year in November.
Right. That's the first one after the actual New Year, which makes more sense. Like, this is the middle of winter. We basically just had the first official day of winter. This doesn't feel like a time to make plans or to set intentions, right? It feels more like a time to go within and to take care of yourself. We're still hibernating, or at least I am.
We'll talk about this in an April episode where it's more appropriate and we're not
Right?
tangenting. But I actually read an article today where the new year before like 1562
Was in
was celebrating
spring.
April 1st. And I feel like that first moon in November, January, April,
So that's another good reason why to pick the moons, because maybe the new year doesn't really make sense to you right now, but it's a new moon, and the new moon at the end of this month is right before Imbolc, which is another beginning, which some people see as kind of the first inklings of spring. So the new moon being right around there, which is, February 1st is also my birthday, that makes it feel extra powerful, like extra new beginnings. I think if any magic you want to do right around that new moon on the 29th and Imbolc on the 1st, that's going to be fabulous for manifesting, right? You're moving into Aquarius and all of this. I think those energies are going to be particularly potent then.
I just say do whatever you can on the moon, near the moon, and it qualifies.
I agree. Pay attention to the cycles and working with the full moon as a touchstone, as a point for you to do something extra special in your practice makes it really easy. The moon itself feels special. So even if you can't be flamboyant because you're in the closet, try to do something ritualistic and regular and a little extra special on the full moon to enhance your witchcraft and magic practice.
And if you are in the broom closet, maybe it is as simple as tell your friends and family, "Hey, I'm going to walk the dog," or "I'm just taking a walk around the block," or
Right?
whatever, almost like just spend that few minutes with just you and the moon.
If all you can do is sit at your desk and journal a little bit about it, that works too. Especially in the beginnings of your practice, the moon is a wonderful way to ritualize and familiarize yourself with a regular practice.
And I feel a good way to connect.
Wonderful way to connect with the energies of place, with deity, the energies of the universe. The full moon just makes it feel that much closer.
And if you happen to have what they call a blue moon, not really blue, I find those to be extra potent. Like that 13th moon of the year. I like 13. I don't know, maybe it's a Friday the 13th thing from when I was a kid. But I find that blue moon, that 13th moon, a little more oomphy. Do you have an opinion on that blue moon?
Blue moons are cool because they only happen every few years, like every 2.5 or something like that. So they are a little bit more special because they're rare, and anything that's rare has a type of magic about it. So yeah, I do think they're pretty cool.
A little more oomph, I think.
Yeah, a little extra energy. So pay attention to the moons, journal them, and keep being witchy, keep doing you, and try not to worry too much about the shoulds. Do what works well for you. Take what works from the things that we said. We gave you a lot of different information. You don't need to do all of them. Find the ones that work for you, find the ones that feel right for you, and then expand from there.
Practicing is practicing no matter how you practice.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Back on the Broomstick. Hopefully, you will do something a little special for this upcoming full moon or for maybe February's full moon. Because to be honest, I usually end up going, oh shit, the full moon was last night. And then trying to do a makeup ritual. So I'll probably
Hence
end
the
up doing
3-day window.
That's right. And we're always thankful for a little bit of grace.
Enjoy the moon, folks. Howl at it if that's all you can do. But what's most important
Is to keep it witchy.